Well, hello, my name's Mark Buchanan and I'm the Principal Consultant here at Practicaleyes. In this video, I'm going to talk about the concept of the toxic pause. It's that occasion when leadership moves and their people don't, and often the results can be catastrophic. This really dates back to 2008. I had quite a few multinational clients all at the same time. And of course, the global meltdown hit us in that year. This massive financial crash, which really changed the trading landscape for pretty much everybody. And it was just fascinating to me that when that came, some of my clients folded. They just couldn't cope. And some of those, it's understandable. You could look at their business model and say, yep, I can understand why that was catastrophic for you. But some of them, in my opinion, should have survived, but they didn't. And it was the toxic pause that really saw them out of business. And what do I mean by the toxic pause? Well, if you think about an organization, some have got a very flat structure, some of them are very hierarchical. But all organizations have got what we could call leaders, and they've all got what I'll call team members. So there are those who are primarily responsible, and there are those who are helping or serving or working with those who are responsible. And it's how harmonious we can keep that structure that makes all the difference. So in 2008, quite a few of my clients adapted very quickly at leadership level. They'd analysed the situation, they worked out what the strategy needed to be, they knew what they had to do to stay in business. But the key question was, when leadership moved, did everybody else move? And in some cases, the answer was yes, but sadly, in some cases, the answer was no. And it's not always that they never move. Sometimes it's they do move, but just not fast enough. So there's that pause. Leadership says, we need to really go this way. And everybody else goes, well, I think I just want to think about that. I don't want to dive straight in. I don't want to give you my instant commitment. And there's many reasons for that, but we could summarize them with just three, really. The first one is cynicism. Especially in an organization that institutes new initiatives on a regular basis and then doesn't see them through, or they don't work, or they're not properly worked out. It just builds cynicism in people. And they say, look, I put a lot of effort into Project X that we did last year, and then everybody gave up on it. We never heard any more about it. We never saw the outcome. We never really worked out how it was going to work for us. So why should I buy into Project Y when you did such a bad job on Project X? Sometimes it's confusion, especially in the heat of the moment when companies need to react quickly. The temptation is for leaders to just do a very quick explanation of what we're going to do. But it's often not enough for people to really understand it. And asking people to do things which are radical, which are different to what they're used to, without them fully understanding it, is a recipe for disaster. And I get it from leadership's point of view. They're trying to hurry into their future. They're trying to work very quickly to avoid the disaster that they see is coming. But you can't short circuit the time it takes to explain things properly. And if you try to, you get the opposite of the result that you really want. The other one is unbelief. I just don't see how this is going to work. Maybe you have explained it really well, but people can't see the connection between the outcome you say you need and the initiative you're asking them to follow in order to get there. And again, that's often a timing issue, or maybe it's just poor communication. But either way, we could summarize those three problems and call it mistrust. And that's a big issue, because when trust is low, it all goes slow. Now, there's a brilliant book by a guy called Stephen M.R. Covey called Leading at the Speed of Trust, and he goes into this in a lot of detail. But when I first came across it and started to deliver that training, it was a real aha moment for me. That it isn't always the strategy that's wrong. It's not that we've got the wrong people. It's that we're not building trust deliberately. And we're allowing trust to be eroded without even realizing that's what's happening. And we don't know it's a problem until we need people to move quickly, but they don't or they can't. One of the main reasons for that is that there is still a surprisingly large number of organizations trying to run themselves on a command and control basis. That's old industrial age thinking, where we believe that because we're the leaders or because we are paying salaries, that in some way we own our people and therefore have the right to demand their obedience. Now, if you're paying your hard-earned money to somebody, I get it that you want a return on the investment that you're making in them, but all of the attitudes and approaches that go alongside the idea that you own your people will harm you. They will not help you. In effect, we need to treat people as volunteers who just happen to get paid by us. People are mobile these days. Skills are transferable. This is not the only job that your people will have. Most of us will have 7 or 8 completely different employers between ending our education phase and retiring. So the idea that you own your people and they'll stick with you come what may just because you pay them is a bit of a daft idea in these days. But again, in 2008, a lot of organizations made that mistake of thinking there are people, we can tell them what to do, doesn't matter if they understand it, doesn't matter if they get it, they just need to react now or the company will be gone. And we use that awful consequence to justify what's really quite poor leadership behavior. Basically, you've got to sell, not tell. It's not enough just to say, we're doing this. We've got to explain why are we doing this? How will doing this work? What is it specifically that we need from our people? And why will that effort on their part give us the outcome that we need? And selling takes time, it takes thought, it takes preparation, but it's so much more effective than just walking in and telling them. We can't say things once either. That's a big mistake. Sometimes I say to people, but when did you explain this to your people? Well, we had a big town hall meeting 6 months ago. And I said, and was this the only thing that you talked about? Oh, no, we had about 12 different things that we talked about. And I said, well, then there is no chance that your people actually got it. So saying it once isn't enough. And if it's a big priority, it needs to get a lot of time and a lot of attention. And it needs to be repeated over and over and over again. Basically, it's the process of inculcation that I'm talking about. Now, that's a big, long word, but it means it's the practice of fixing beliefs or ideas in other people's minds through repetition. Humans aren't very good at capturing things once and remembering it perfectly. So if it's really important, it needs to be said a lot. It's this idea of selling your ideas. So we need to communicate clearly. And by clearly, I mean it needs to be short, it needs to be very clear what you're saying, it needs to be relevant to the people you're saying it to, and it's got to be inspiring. It's got to motivate them. It's got to make them want to do something. It needs to be magnetic as well. Use headlines and slogans and metaphors that will stick in people's minds. You know, newspapers have been doing headlines for hundreds of years because it's an easy way of summarizing what you're trying to say in as few words as possible. It doesn't give the detail, but it's the hook that will hang in their memory, and then the details can hang on to that. Slogans, repeatable language, they're really important too. One of the ways you know you've communicated well is that you hear your language coming out of other people's mouths in meetings or in the canteen or in corridors. That's when you know they've really started to get it. And if we can use metaphors to paint a picture of what the outcome we want would look like, that also helps it stick in people's heads. And we need to repeat regularly, and I really do mean regularly. Pretty much you've got to keep saying this until people beg you to stop, until they just can't take any more of it. And when we've done that, we know we've communicated well enough. And if we take the time to do that, that will build trust between us and our people. So then when the top of the pyramid moves, the rest of the pyramid will move too. So, hope you found that helpful. Thanks very much for listening. And if you want to check out any of my other materials, look around on this YouTube channel or perhaps visit Practicaleyes.com. Thanks a lot.